Welcome to another episode of Ever After Romance Audiobook. This story is an original creation for entertainment only.
Prologue. The city pulsed with ambition beneath the October rain, its towering glass monuments catching fragments of dying sunlight like scattered diamonds. Yet within this glittering metropolis, two souls existed in completely different universes, unknowing that fate was already weaving their destinies together with invisible threads. High above the bustling streets, Sebastian King stood behind floor-to-ceiling windows in his penthouse office, surveying his empire with eyes as cold as winter steel. The reflection staring back at him revealed a man who had everything and felt nothing. At 32, he commanded media networks that shaped public opinion, owned properties that stretched across continents, and wielded power that made grown men tremble. Yet something hollow echoed in his chest, a yearning he couldn't name or purchase. His perfectly manicured fingers traced the glass as he watched the ant-like figures below. Another acquisition closed, his assistant had announced moments ago, but the victory felt as empty as all the others. Sebastian's jaw tightened. When had success become so meaningless? Meanwhile, 20 stories below and 3 miles across town, Lily Chen's paint-stained fingers trembled as she held the final notice. The harsh fluorescent light of her cramped studio apartment cast unforgiving shadows across rejection letters scattered like fallen leaves around her easel. Her latest masterpiece, a canvas bleeding with raw emotion and desperate hope, seemed to mock her from its corner. 30 days, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the radiator's persistent rattle. 30 days to find $1,200, or lose the only space where her dreams still felt possible. Her reflection in the rain-streaked window showed a young woman whose beauty was masked by exhaustion, whose spirit flickered like a candle in a hurricane. At 26, Lily possessed a talent that could move souls, but talent didn't pay bills. 3 jobs barely kept her afloat, while gallery after gallery dismissed her work as too emotional or commercially unviable. Tonight, clutching her coffee shop uniform for tomorrow's opening shift, she wondered if her mother had been right, if art was just a beautiful delusion. Neither Sebastian nor Lily knew that tomorrow would shatter their carefully constructed worlds. Neither could imagine that a simple coffee order would ignite a connection powerful enough to bridge the chasm between penthouse suites and studio apartments. And certainly neither suspected that love, real, consuming, transformative love, was about to turn their separate universes upside down. The rain continued falling, washing the city clean, preparing it for a new beginning that would start with spilled coffee and stolen glances. In exactly 12 hours, Sebastian King would walk into Lily Chen's world, and nothing would ever be the same. But first, they each had one more night of believing they were destined to remain alone. The storm was coming, and it would change everything.
Chapter 1. Rock Bottom. The eviction notice felt like ice against Lily's trembling fingers as morning light filtered through her apartment's single grimy window. Bold red letters screamed, "Final Notice," with the cruel efficiency of a death sentence, each word driving deeper into her already fractured heart. She'd known this day was coming, had felt it approaching like storm clouds gathering on the horizon, yet seeing it in black and white made her knees buckle. 30 days, she whispered again, her voice cracking with the weight of impending disaster. Around her, canvases lined the walls like silent witnesses to her struggle, each one representing months of poured-out soul that nobody wanted to buy. The irony wasn't lost on her, surrounded by beauty, drowning in despair. Outside, her ancient Honda Civic wheezed its final breath, steam billowing from under the hood like a dying dragon's last exhale. Lily stared at the mechanical corpse through rain-streaked glass, feeling something essential break inside her chest. Without a car, reaching her 3 jobs would become an odyssey of crowded buses and expensive ride shares she couldn't afford. The rejection email from Meridian Gallery glowed mockingly on her phone screen. "While we appreciate your artistic passion, your work doesn't align with our current commercial direction." The same polite dismissal she'd received 17 times this month, each one chipping away at her confidence like water eroding stone. Consequently, here she stood at 6:30 a.m., pulling on her coffee shop uniform with hands that should have been creating masterpieces instead of serving caffeine to strangers who looked through her as if she were invisible. The green apron felt like a straitjacket, binding her true self beneath layers of forced smiles and customer service pleasantries. Nevertheless, she had to keep moving. Rent wouldn't pay itself, and her manager had already warned her about being late. Lily grabbed her paint-stained messenger bag, the one luxury she refused to replace, and stepped into the October morning that bit through her thin jacket like teeth. The coffee shop's familiar chaos enveloped her immediately. The hiss of espresso machines, the chatter of morning commuters, the relentless ding of the register. Her co-workers barely acknowledged her arrival, too consumed with their own survival to notice another drowning soul. However, as Lily tied her apron with mechanical precision, something shifted in the atmosphere. A strange electricity seemed to charge the air, making the fine hairs on her arms stand at attention. She glanced toward the entrance, inexplicably drawn to watch the door as if some invisible force was pulling her attention. Then the bell chimed, and Destiny walked in wearing an $8,000 suit, carrying an aura of power that made the entire coffee shop hold its breath. Lily's heart stuttered as storm-gray eyes swept the room with predatory intensity until they locked onto hers with the impact of lightning striking Earth. Time suspended, crystalline and perfect, before chaos erupted in the most spectacular way possible. Chapter 2. The Encounter. Sebastian King moved through the world like a predator among prey, his presence commanding attention without effort. The coffee shop's cramped quarters seemed to shrink around his imposing frame as conversations stuttered to whispers and smartphones emerged to capture glimpses of the notorious media mogul. Yet his steel-gray eyes remained fixed on the barista behind the counter, the one whose paint-stained fingers trembled as she reached for the espresso machine. Lily felt his gaze like a physical touch, scorching through her composure with unsettling intensity. Something about this stranger made her pulse race in ways that had nothing to do with caffeine and everything to do with the dangerous magnetism radiating from his perfectly sculpted features. When he approached her station, the rest of the world seemed to fade into background noise. Double espresso, extra shot. His voice rumbled with the kind of authority that suggested he'd never heard the word no. Rich and commanding, it sent unexpected shivers down Lily's spine as she fumbled with the portafilter. Meanwhile, the morning rush pressed against her consciousness like a tidal wave. Orders shouted from every direction, the espresso machine hissed its mechanical symphony, and her manager's disapproving glare burned into her back. Consequently, when she reached for the cup, her exhausted reflexes betrayed her spectacularly. The scalding espresso arced through the air in perfect slow motion, landing with devastating accuracy across the stranger's pristine white shirt and charcoal suit jacket. Liquid darkness spread across expensive fabric like spilled ink on virgin parchment, and the entire coffee shop fell into horrified silence. "Oh, God," Lily gasped, her hands flying to her mouth in mortification. "I'm so sorry. I'm such a disaster today. Your suit must cost more than I make in 3 months." However, instead of the explosion of rage she expected, something extraordinary happened. Sebastian's lips curved into the first genuine smile that had graced his features in months, transforming his austere face into something breathtakingly beautiful. Where others would have demanded compensation or threatened lawsuits, he simply studied her with fascination. "Don't apologize," he said softly, accepting the towels she thrust at him with trembling hands. "Honesty like that is refreshing." Lily blinked in confusion. Honesty? Most people would have blamed the machine, or the rush, or anything except themselves. His fingers brushed hers as he took the towels, sending electricity shooting up her arm. "You took responsibility immediately. That's rare in my world." "Your world?" she echoed, still frantically dabbing at his shirt while trying not to notice how solid his chest felt beneath the ruined fabric. Sebastian's smile deepened mysteriously. Here was someone who truly didn't recognize him, didn't see dollar signs or opportunity, just genuine human connection. "Let me pay for this," he said, pulling out his wallet. "The coffee was free. I ruined your clothes." "Not for the coffee." He placed a $100 bill on the counter, then noticed her small stack of business cards beside the register. Lily Chen, original artwork. Without asking permission, he slipped one into his jacket pocket, their eyes locking in a moment that felt charged with infinite possibility. "Until next time," Sebastian murmured, leaving Lily breathless and wondering why those 4 simple words sounded exactly like a promise. Chapter 3: Anonymous Savior. 24 hours after the coffee shop encounter, Lily's laptop screen glowed like a beacon of impossible hope in her darkened apartment. The email had arrived at exactly 11:47 p.m., when exhaustion from her triple shift should have rendered her unconscious. Instead, she sat transfixed, reading the message for the 7th time, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. "Dear Ms. Chen, I came across your business card and was moved to view your portfolio online. Your work possesses a rare emotional authenticity that speaks to the soul. I would like to purchase 3 pieces: Midnight Dreams, Fractured Light, and Phoenix Rising. I am prepared to offer $4,000 for the collection. This is not charity. This is recognition of genuine talent. Please respond if interested. Payment can be transferred immediately. Sincerely, AK, $4,000. The exact amount needed for rent, car repairs, and 3 months of breathing room." Coincidence seemed too cruel, yet Providence felt too generous. Lily's paint-stained fingers hovered over the keyboard, suspicion warring with desperate hope in her chest. Meanwhile, across the city, Sebastian King stood before his penthouse windows, watching the lights of her neighborhood twinkle in the distance like earthbound stars. His phone lay silent on the mahogany desk behind him, waiting for her response with the patience of a spider monitoring its web. Every instinct screamed that this was madness. Billionaire media moguls didn't rescue struggling artists they'd met for 30 seconds. Nevertheless, something about Lily Chen had haunted him through 24 hours of board meetings and acquisition calls. Her genuine horror at spilling coffee, the way she'd taken immediate responsibility, the fire he'd glimpsed beneath her exhaustion. It all painted a portrait of authenticity in a world drowning in pretense. His assistant Marcus had raised every conceivable objection. "Sir, this is highly irregular. What if she investigates? What if the press discovers?" "Then we'll handle it," Sebastian had replied with finality that brooked no argument. He'd built an empire on calculated risks, yet this felt different. Personal. Dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with stock prices or corporate espionage. Back in her apartment, Lily's cursor blinked accusingly in the reply field. Everything rational told her to be cautious. Anonymous buyers didn't materialize from thin air offering salvation. However, rationality was a luxury she couldn't afford when eviction loomed like a gathering storm. Her paintings watched from their corners, each one a piece of her soul made manifest. Midnight Dreams captured her loneliness in swirls of midnight blue and silver. Fractured Light depicted hope breaking through despair in jagged golden rays. Phoenix Rising, her most personal piece, showed rebirth emerging from ashes with breathtaking beauty. If someone truly saw value in her work, did their identity matter? Lily's fingers found their courage and began typing, "Dear AK, I accept your offer." Across the city, Sebastian's phone chimed with incoming email, and his lips curved into a smile that would have made his business rivals tremble with unease. The game had begun, though neither player fully understood the rules they were about to break. Chapter 4: Unexpected Returns. 3 days later, Sebastian King had become the coffee shop's most intriguing regular customer, arriving each morning at precisely 8:15 a.m., like clockwork wrapped in expensive suits. Lily found herself checking the clock obsessively, her pulse quickening as the appointed hour approached. Today marked his 4th visit, and she'd embarrassingly memorized every detail: the way he moved with predatory grace, how his steel-gray eyes seemed to catalog everything, the subtle cologne that lingered long after he'd gone. Double espresso, extra shot had evolved into something far more complex. Yesterday, he'd requested a cortado with oat milk and a dash of cinnamon. This morning, he'd asked for a Gibraltar with house-made vanilla syrup, watching her work with an intensity that made her hands tremble. "You're quite the coffee connoisseur," Lily observed, carefully layering the microphone with artistic precision. Something about his presence demanded her absolute best, transforming routine drink preparation into performance art. "I appreciate craftsmanship," Sebastian replied, his voice carrying undertones that seemed to reference far more than coffee. "There's beauty in watching someone pour their soul into their work, regardless of how the world values it." The comment struck too close to home, making Lily's breath catch. How could a stranger understand her struggles so perfectly? Moreover, why did his words feel like gentle caresses against wounds she'd never admitted having? "Speaking of work," he continued, accepting the Gibraltar with fingers that brushed hers deliberately, "how's your art progressing? That business card mentioned original artwork." Heat flooded Lily's cheeks. "You actually looked at that?" "Why wouldn't I?" His eyes held hers with magnetic intensity. "Tell me about your latest piece." Subsequently, what began as casual conversation evolved into something far more dangerous. Sebastian asked questions that revealed genuine understanding about color theory, emotional expression, the agony of translating internal vision into external reality. Meanwhile, Lily found herself opening like a flower toward sunlight, sharing insights she'd never voiced aloud. "Most people think art is decoration," she said, unconsciously leaning closer across the counter. "But real art is surgery without anesthesia, cutting yourself open and hoping someone sees beauty in the blood." Sebastian's pupils dilated at her passionate declaration. Here was fire beneath the exhaustion, brilliance masked by circumstance. "And what does your blood reveal?" "Too much," Lily whispered, then caught herself. Why was she confessing intimate truths to this enigmatic stranger? "Good art should be dangerous," Sebastian murmured, his voice dropping to velvet darkness. "Safe art is just expensive wallpaper." Their conversation danced on the knife's edge between professional and personal, each exchange charged with electricity that made the air between them shimmer with possibility. Other customers waited impatiently, but neither seemed capable of breaking the spell. "You talk like someone who understands power," Lily observed, studying his face with artist's eyes. "Most people in suits just want status symbols." Sebastian's smile turned predatory. "What makes you think I'm not like most people?" "Because most people don't ask baristas about emotional surgery and dangerous art," she countered, surprising herself with her boldness. "Who are you, really?" For a heartbeat, Sebastian wavered on the precipice of honesty. Then his phone buzzed with urgent messages, shattering the moment like glass against stone. "Until tomorrow," he said, leaving another generous tip and walking away with the measured stride of someone accustomed to commanding empires. Lily watched him go, her heart racing with questions that had no answers. Something told her this mysterious man was about to turn her carefully controlled world completely upside down. She had no idea how right she was. Chapter 5. Beyond the Coffee Shop. The ancient Honda Civic chose the worst possible moment to exhale its final mechanical breath, directly outside Meridian Gallery, where Lily had just endured another soul-crushing rejection. Steam billowed from beneath the hood like a funeral pyre for her transportation, while autumn rain drummed against the windshield with the persistence of her mounting despair. "Come on," she whispered, turning the key with desperate hope. The engine responded with a death rattle that echoed through the empty parking garage. Consequently, she found herself stranded 6 miles from home with barely enough money for bus fare, her portfolio case growing heavier with each rejection it contained. Car trouble? That familiar voice made her heart stutter against her ribs. Sebastian emerged from the shadows between concrete pillars like some impossibly elegant specter. his charcoal coat unbuttoned to reveal another perfectly tailored suit underneath. Rain had darkened his hair to midnight, making his storm gray eyes appear even more intense in the fluorescent lighting. "You're everywhere," Lily breathed, then immediately regretted how that sounded. "I mean, what are the odds?" "I was meeting with gallery owners about potential acquisitions," he said smoothly, though something flickered in his expression. "Let me give you a ride." Every survival instinct screamed warnings about accepting rides from mysterious strangers, yet something deeper, some primal recognition, whispered trust. Moreover, practical desperation trumped caution when faced with the alternative of waiting 2 hours for public transportation. Sebastian's car turned out to be a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than her annual rent. Nevertheless, he opened her door with old-fashioned courtesy that made her pulse flutter unexpectedly. Inside, the leather interior smelled like expensive cologne and dangerous possibilities. "Where to?" he asked, but his eyes were already studying her with that unsettling intensity that made her feel simultaneously naked and cherished. "Honestly, nowhere impressive." Lily provided directions to her neighborhood, watching his face for judgment that never came. Instead, Sebastian navigated through increasingly shabby streets with the same composed confidence he'd displayed in the upscale coffee shop. When they reached her building, a converted warehouse that had seen better decades, Sebastian's expression remained carefully neutral. However, something in his eyes softened as he took in the fire escapes, the graffitied walls, the evidence of dreams deferred but not abandoned. "Would you like to see why I keep getting rejected?" The invitation tumbled from Lily's lips before rational thought could intervene. "My studio's upstairs. It's not much, but..." "I'd be honored," Sebastian replied with such sincerity that her breath caught. The narrow staircase forced them closer together, his warmth radiating through expensive fabric to ignite fires beneath her skin. Meanwhile, Lily's hands trembled as she unlocked her door, suddenly terrified of revealing her most intimate space to this enigmatic man who seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed defenses. Her studio apartment sprawled before them in organized chaos, canvases leaning against every wall, paint tubes scattered like abandoned prayers, brushes standing sentinel in mason jars. The space smelled of turpentine and desperate creativity, while evening light filtered through paint-splattered windows to bathe everything in golden possibility. Sebastian stepped inside and went completely still. Chapter 6. The Commission. Sebastian moved through Lily's studio like a man discovering a hidden cathedral, his usually composed features transformed by genuine awe. Each canvas seemed to capture fragments of her soul, raw, unfiltered emotion bleeding through brushstrokes that spoke of sleepless nights and desperate hope. The paintings surrounded them like silent confessions, creating an intimacy more profound than any physical touch. "This is extraordinary," he whispered, pausing before Phoenix rising. The piece depicted rebirth emerging from destruction with such visceral beauty that it made his chest tighten with unexpected emotion. "How do galleries not see this?" "They see unmarketable emotion," Lily replied, her voice barely audible as she watched him study her life's work. "Contemporary buyers want safe decorations, not windows into someone's bleeding heart." Meanwhile, Sebastian absorbed every detail. The way afternoon light caught the silver threads in fractured light, how midnight dreams seemed to pulse with living darkness, the fearless vulnerability that transformed mere paint into transcendent beauty. This wasn't just talent. This was artistry that could move mountains and reshape souls. "You're wrong about something," he said, turning to face her with intensity that made the air between them crackle. "This isn't unmarketable, it's priceless." "Priceless doesn't pay rent." Lily laughed bitterly, yet something in his expression made her breath catch. "Though my mysterious benefactor seems to disagree. Someone bought 3 pieces this week." Sebastian's pulse quickened dangerously. "Mysterious benefactor?" "Anonymous buyer calling themselves AK." Lily moved closer, unconsciously drawn by the magnetic pull of his presence. Offered exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it. Almost like they knew. Perhaps they simply recognized authentic brilliance, Sebastian murmured, his voice dropping to velvet darkness. The space between them seemed to shrink with each heartbeat, the studio walls closing in to create a cocoon of dangerous intimacy. You talk like you understand art collectors, Lily observed, studying his face with artist's perception. Most people see paintings as investments or status symbols. And you see them as pieces of your soul, Sebastian replied, reaching up to trace a streak of paint on her cheek with gentle fingertips. That's what makes you extraordinary. The touch ignited electric fire beneath her skin, making her lean unconsciously into his palm. Consequently, the distance between them evaporated entirely as Sebastian's other hand found her waist, pulling her against his solid warmth with careful reverence. Lily. He breathed her name like a prayer, his storm-gray eyes darkening to midnight as they focused on her parted lips. This is insane, she whispered, yet her hands fisted in his shirt, betraying her words. I don't even know your last name. Does it matter? Sebastian's thumb brushed across her lower lip, making her tremble with need she'd never experienced. Some connections transcend logic. However, just as his mouth descended toward hers, her phone erupted with the shrill insistence of another bill collector. The spell shattered like glass against stone, leaving them frozen in the aftermath of almost contact. Lily stepped back reluctantly, her hands shaking as she reached for the device that had destroyed their perfect moment. Of course, Sebastian replied, though his eyes promised this was merely postponement, not abandonment. But, Lily? She paused, phone still ringing insistently. Expect another commission soon. Something personal this time. A piece about hope emerging from darkness. Then he was gone, leaving her breathless and wondering how a stranger could understand her heart so completely. Chapter 7. The Date. 2 days later, Sebastian appeared at the coffee shop during the evening lull when golden hour light painted everything in shades of amber and possibility. Gone was his usual business attire. Instead, he wore dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that made his storm-gray eyes appear almost silver. Lily's pulse quickened at the sight of him, her hands automatically smoothing her paint-stained apron with nervous energy. "Let me take you somewhere," he said without preamble, his voice carrying an undertone of barely controlled urgency. "Not for coffee, not by accident. A real date, if you'll trust me." The word date hung between them like a bridge across dangerous waters. Consequently, Lily found herself nodding before rational thought could intervene, mesmerized by the vulnerable hope flickering beneath his usual composed confidence. "I close in 20 minutes, she whispered, acutely aware of how her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird sensing freedom. Sebastian's smile could have illuminated the entire city. "I'll wait." An hour later, they stood before the most enchanting gallery Lily had ever seen, a converted brownstone tucked between vintage bookshops and antique stores, its windows glowing with warm light that spilled onto rain-dampened sidewalks. The sign read, "Sanctuary Gallery, where souls speak through art." "How did you know?" Lily breathed, her eyes wide with wonder as they approached the intimate space. "Lucky guess," Sebastian replied, though something deeper flickered in his expression. Inside, the gallery showcased emerging artists whose work pulsed with raw emotion and fearless vulnerability. Exactly the kind of art that mainstream galleries dismissed as unmarketable. Moreover, Sebastian moved through the space like someone intimately familiar with artistic passion, offering insights that revealed surprising depth of knowledge. When they paused before a painting that captured urban loneliness in swirls of midnight blue and silver, he said quietly, "This reminds me of your midnight dreams." "You remember the title?" Lily turned to face him, startled by his attention to detail. "I remember everything about you," Sebastian confessed, his voice dropping to velvet darkness. The way you bite your lip when concentrating, how your eyes light up when discussing art, the paint stain on your left thumb that never quite disappears. The confession hung between them like a declaration of war against logic and caution. Subsequently, when Sebastian reached for her hand, threading their fingers together with gentle reverence, Lily felt the last of her defenses crumble into dust. "Tell me about your family," he murmured, as they wandered deeper into the gallery's intimate corridors. "What do they think of your artistic dreams?" "They think I'm chasing impossible fantasies," Lily admitted, leaning into his warmth. "My mother wanted me to be a doctor, something stable and respectable. She calls art my expensive hobby." "And your father?" "Gone since I was 12. Turns out supporting artistic dreams wasn't his forte either." Sebastian stopped walking, turning to face her with intensity that made the air shimmer. "Their blindness doesn't diminish your light, Lily. You're extraordinary. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve you in their world." The words hit her like physical caresses, healing wounds she'd carried for years. However, before she could respond, Sebastian's thumb traced her cheek with reverent gentleness. "You're trembling," he observed softly. "You terrify me," she whispered honestly. "Good," Sebastian murmured, his mouth descending toward hers. "You terrify me too." When their lips finally met, the kiss ignited fires that threatened to consume everything safe and predictable in Lily's carefully controlled world. Chapter 8. The Trap. Titans. The photograph appeared on social media at 3:47 a.m., capturing the exact moment Sebastian's lips had claimed Lily's outside sanctuary gallery. In the image, passion blazed between them like visible electricity, transforming an intimate moment into public spectacle. However, the caption made Lily's blood run cold. "Media mogul Sebastian King's mystery woman. Who is she?" Lily stared at her phone screen in mounting horror, the coffee shop's morning prep forgotten as reality crashed around her like shattered glass. Sebastian King, as in King Media Empire, the man whose face graced business magazines and whose name commanded boardrooms across 3 continents. The stranger who'd been buying her coffee for weeks wasn't just wealthy, he was powerful beyond her wildest imagination. "Everything all right, hun?" asked Maria, her coworker, but Lily barely heard the question. Her mind reeled with the implications. Why would someone of Sebastian's stature waste time with a struggling barista? Moreover, what game was he really playing? Meanwhile, across the city, Sebastian's phone buzzed with increasingly urgent messages from his publicist, board members, and security team. The photograph had gone viral, spawning countless theories about his mystery companion. Nevertheless, the calls he ignored weren't what made his blood run cold. It was the single text from a number he'd hoped never to see again. "Interesting choice in companions, darling. We need to talk. V. Veronica Ashworth, his ex-fiancée, the woman who'd nearly destroyed him once before with her calculated ambition and ruthless manipulation. Seeing her name made Sebastian's jaw clench with protective fury. Whatever she wanted, it couldn't be good for Lily. However, the morning's complications were far from over. Another email from AK awaited Lily's attention when she finally checked her messages during her break. "Your commissioned piece moves me deeply. I believe it's time we met in person. Are you available this weekend? AK." The request sent ice through Lily's veins. Meeting her anonymous patron should have felt like a career milestone, yet something about the timing felt ominous. Furthermore, a nagging voice whispered that coincidences this convenient rarely happened by accident. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Sebastian's familiar voice made her spin around, her heart leaping despite her confused emotions. He stood in the coffee shop doorway, looking perfectly composed except for the tension radiating from his rigid shoulders. "We need to talk," Lily said quietly, her voice carrying undertones of accusation that made his stomach knot with dread. "Yes," Sebastian agreed, his storm gray eyes holding hers with desperate intensity. We do. But before either could say another word, Lily's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number that made her blood freeze. Stop digging where you don't belong. Some secrets are dangerous. A friend. Outside the coffee shop window, a figure in a dark sedan lowered expensive binoculars and started the engine. The trap was closing, and neither Sebastian nor Lily realized how much danger they were truly in. The hunt had begun. Chapter 9. Truth Explosion. The revelation hit Lily like a physical blow, stealing the breath from her lungs and making the world tilt dangerously on its axis. There, displayed on Sebastian's phone screen during what should have been their private conversation, was an email draft addressed to her, signed with the initials that had haunted her dreams for weeks. AK. Anonymous Kindness. Arrogant King. The truth crystallized with brutal clarity, each piece of the puzzle sliding into place with the precision of a blade finding its mark. Sebastian King, media mogul, billionaire, the man she'd been falling desperately in love with, was also her mysterious benefactor. Every coffee shop visit, every meaningful conversation, every stolen glance had been orchestrated by someone who saw her as nothing more than an interesting charity case. You? The word emerged as barely a whisper, yet it carried the weight of her shattered heart. All this time you've been... Sebastian's face went ashen, his storm-gray eyes reflecting the panic of a man watching his carefully constructed world implode. Lily, let me explain. Explain what? Her voice rose like a gathering storm, pain transmuting into fury with devastating speed. How you've been playing puppet master with my life. How every conversation, every touch, every moment I thought was real was just you pulling strings. It wasn't like that. Sebastian stepped toward her, but Lily recoiled as if his proximity burned. I bought your art because it moved me, not because I pitied you. Moved you? Lily laughed bitterly, the sound cutting through the coffee shop's morning bustle like broken glass. You didn't even know my work existed until you took my business card. Everything after that was you playing God with someone too desperate to question miracles. The accusation hit Sebastian like a physical blow because it contained enough truth to sting. Nevertheless, he pressed forward, desperation making his voice crack with uncharacteristic vulnerability. I fell in love with you, Lily. That was never part of any plan. Love? She spat the word like poison. You don't love me. You love the idea of rescuing some pathetic little artist who made you feel noble and generous. Did it give you a thrill, Sebastian? Watching me grovel with gratitude for your scraps? That's not... Did you laugh with your billionaire friends about the naive girl who thought someone actually wanted her art? Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her voice remained steady as steel. About how easy it was to make me fall for my own savior? Stop. Sebastian's composure finally cracked, raw anguish bleeding through his controlled facade. You're wrong about everything. Am I? Lily reached into her messenger bag with trembling hands, withdrawing an envelope stuffed with cash. Here's your money back, every penny. I may be poor, Sebastian, but I'm not a fool. At least, not anymore. She threw the envelope at his feet, bills scattering like autumn leaves across the coffee shop floor. Don't you dare contact me again. Don't buy my art, don't come to my coffee shop, and don't pretend you ever saw me as anything more than an amusing pet project. As Lily turned to leave, Sebastian caught her wrist with desperate fingers. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made, she whispered, her voice breaking with the weight of her shattered dreams, was believing someone like you could actually love someone like me. She pulled free and walked away, leaving Sebastian standing among scattered bills and the ruins of everything that had mattered. Outside, a figure in a dark sedan smiled with cold satisfaction. Phase 1 was complete. Chapter 10. Separate Misery. 3 weeks of silence stretched between them like an ocean of regret, each day bleeding into the next with the relentless ache of phantom limb syndrome. Lily threw herself into her art with desperate fury, transforming heartbreak into brushstrokes that seemed to pulse with living pain. Her latest canvas, a study in blues and blacks that captured the exact moment trust shattered, had consumed every spare hour between her 3 jobs. The coffee shop felt like a mausoleum now, each morning shift a reminder of storm-gray eyes and promises that had turned to ash. Moreover, without Sebastian's mysterious commissions, financial pressure mounted with crushing inevitability. Nevertheless, Lily refused to compromise her newfound resolve. She would succeed or fail on her own merits, not as someone's expensive hobby. "You look terrible," Maria observed during the afternoon lull, studying Lily's hollow cheeks and paint-stained fingers with motherly concern. "When's the last time you actually ate something?" "Food is overrated," Lily replied mechanically, her attention focused on the street outside where every tall figure made her heart stutter with treacherous hope. Meanwhile, across the city, Sebastian King sat in his penthouse office like a king surveying the ashes of his conquered kingdom. Board meetings blurred together in meaningless succession, while his empire ran itself with cold efficiency. However, success felt hollow when every achievement reminded him of Lily's words. "Did it give you a thrill, watching me grovel with gratitude for your scraps?" "Sir?" Marcus, his assistant, appeared in the doorway with the careful demeanor of someone approaching a wounded predator. "The quarterly reports need your signature, and Ms. Ashworth is here to see you." Veronica Ashworth swept into his office like a perfectly orchestrated storm, her designer heels clicking against marble with predatory precision. Blonde hair fell in calculated waves around features that belonged on magazine covers, while her smile carried the warmth of winter moonlight. "Hello, darling," she purred, settling into the chair across from his desk with feline grace. "You look absolutely dreadful. Guilt doesn't suit you." "What do you want, Veronica?" Sebastian's voice carried enough ice to freeze hell itself. "To discuss our future, of course." She crossed her legs with deliberate sensuality. "You see, while you've been playing house with that adorable little artist, I've been busy acquiring significant shares in your company, enough to make things complicated." Sebastian's blood turned to Arctic fury. "You orchestrated this. The photograph, the threats, all of it." "I prefer to think of it as removing obstacles," Veronica replied with silken malice. "That girl was never worthy of you, Sebastian. We both know where you belong." "With a manipulative sociopath who destroys everything she touches? With someone who understands power and isn't afraid to use it?" Veronica leaned forward, her voice dropping to honeyed poison. "Break up with her completely. Announce our reconciliation, and I'll sell my shares back at cost. Refuse, and I'll make your life and hers very unpleasant." Sebastian's hands clenched into fists. "If you touch her, I won't have to. She's already broken, darling. My work there is done." After Veronica left, Sebastian stood at his windows watching Lily's neighborhood in the distance. Somewhere in those shabby streets, she was probably painting her pain into something beautiful, while he sat trapped in a cage of his own making. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Check Sanctuary Gallery's website." A friend. The webpage showed Lily's latest work, raw, devastating pieces that transformed agony into transcendent beauty. The centerpiece was titled "When Titans Fall," depicting a figure made of glass and silver shattering into 1,000 brilliant fragments. Sebastian's chest tightened with recognition. She was painting their story and somehow making it magnificent. Chapter 11. The Gallery. The invitation arrived on cream-colored cardstock that felt like silk between Lily's trembling fingers, delivered by courier at precisely 6 p.m. on a rain-soaked Thursday evening. Elegant script announced, "Sanctuary Gallery presents Fractured Light, the extraordinary work of Lily Chen. Opening reception tonight, 7 p.m. Your presence is requested." Lily's heart hammered against her ribs as recognition dawned with crystalline clarity. These weren't just any paintings, they were hers. Every piece she'd created during their month of stolen moments and shattered dreams, displayed with professional lighting that transformed her tiny apartment's desperate creations into gallery-worthy masterpieces. "This is impossible," she whispered, yet her feet were already carrying her toward the door. Outside, autumn rain painted the sidewalks with liquid silver, while her pulse thundered with equal parts terror and anticipation. Meanwhile, Sebastian stood in Sanctuary Gallery's main corridor, adjusting the placement of When Titans Fall for the 7th time. His usually immaculate appearance showed signs of stress, tie loosened, hair disheveled from nervous fingers, storm gray eyes reflecting the desperation of a man gambling everything on a single perfect moment. "The press is arriving," Marcus reported, checking his tablet with efficient precision. Art critics from the Times, collectors from Uptown, and several prominent gallery owners who've been asking about her work since the previews went live. "And Veronica?" "Handled," Marcus replied grimly. "The SEC found her insider trading activities quite fascinating. She'll be too busy with federal investigators to bother anyone for the foreseeable future." However, none of that mattered compared to the question burning through Sebastian's chest like acid. Would Lily come? The gallery doors chimed at exactly 7:15, and Sebastian's world stopped rotating on its axis. Lily stood silhouetted against the rain-darkened street, wearing a simple black dress that made her look like poetry given human form. Her dark hair fell in damp waves around shoulders that trembled with barely controlled emotion, while her eyes swept the gallery with the devastating beauty of someone seeing their dreams made manifest. "You came," Sebastian breathed, stepping toward her with the careful reverence of a man approaching something precious and fragile. "My paintings," Lily whispered, her voice cracking with overwhelming emotion. "How did you—" "I didn't buy them as charity, Lily." Sebastian's voice carried the weight of absolute truth. "I bought them because they're extraordinary. Because your talent deserves to be seen by people who understand art, not corporate decoration." Around them, the reception buzzed with animated conversation, as critics and collectors discovered what Sebastian had known from the first moment, that Lily Chen possessed the rare gift of transforming human experience into transcendent beauty. "Look around," Sebastian said softly, gesturing to the crowd of distinguished guests studying her work with genuine reverence. "These people don't know about us, don't know about coffee shops or eviction notices. They only see what I've always seen. Brilliance that takes their breath away." "Sebastian," Lily's voice broke on his name. "I fell in love with you before I bought a single painting," he continued, closing the distance between them until they stood within the dangerous orbit of each other's gravity. "Everything else was just me trying to keep you in my world long enough to prove it." Chapter 12. New Beginning. Tears streamed down Lily's cheeks as she absorbed the impossible reality surrounding her. Critics discussing her brushwork with reverent intensity, collectors inquiring about acquisition, gallery owners extending invitations for future shows. This wasn't charity masquerading as opportunity. This was genuine recognition of her artistic vision. "The Times critic wants to feature you in Sunday's art section," Sebastian said softly, his voice carrying none of his usual commanding authority. Instead, he sounded vulnerable, hopeful, like a man asking for forgiveness rather than expecting it. "3 galleries have already made offers for exclusive representation." "Because of you," Lily whispered, though the accusation lacked its former venom. "Because of your talent." Sebastian reached toward her face, pausing just short of contact. "I may have opened the door, but your art walked through it. Look at their faces, Lily. That's not politeness or networking. That's people being moved by beauty they've never seen before." Subsequently, Lily turned to study the crowd with artist's perception, seeing past social facades to genuine emotion. A prominent collector stood transfixed before Phoenix Rising, tears glistening on weathered cheeks. 2 gallery directors debated the emotional complexity of fractured light with passionate intensity. These weren't people humoring a billionaire's whim. They were experiencing her art the way she'd always dreamed it could be experienced. "I was so afraid," she admitted, her voice barely audible above the reception's elegant murmur. Afraid that nothing about us was real, that I was just some amusing project for you to control. The only thing I couldn't control, Sebastian replied, his storm gray eyes holding hers with devastating honesty, was falling in love with you. Everything else, the money, the connections, the publicity, those were just tools. You were the artist, the vision, the heart that made it all matter. When Lily finally stepped into his arms, the gallery faded into background noise. Their kiss tasted of second chances and new beginnings, of trust rebuilt on stronger foundations than naive hope or desperate gratitude. So what happens now? Lily murmured against his lips. Now you become the artist you were always meant to be, Sebastian replied, and I learned to love someone without trying to control the outcome. 1 year later, the penthouse walls showcased Lily's latest collection, pieces that captured joy with the same fearless honesty that had once depicted despair. Success hadn't softened her edge. If anything, it had sharpened her ability to translate complex emotions into visual poetry. The gallery opening was beautiful, Sebastian said, finding her on the terrace where she'd been sketching the city lights. Though I still think Love's architecture was your strongest piece. Lily smiled, following his gaze to the painting that hung in their shared bedroom, the commission that had brought them together, depicting hope emerging from darkness with prophetic accuracy. That wasn't about hope, she corrected, settling into his arms as the city twinkled below them like earthbound stars. That was about us. Then you painted our future before we even knew we had one. The best art, Lily whispered, always does. The end. Thank you for joining us for I Was Hopeless, until the city's most powerful man fell in love with me. If you enjoyed Lily and Sebastian's journey, please like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments which part made your heart race the most.